Alex, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. How you doing, James?
Doing well. Good to see you. You ready to talk stocks?
Yeah, let's get right to it.
All right. So we talked about in the last episode overcoming some of the fears a new investor may have as they get started. This episode, we'd like to talk a little bit about how much to invest within your budget. Now, that question and that fear often stops people in their tracks as worried about investing too much and overextending themselves or not investing enough, and it doesn't really move the needle for them. What is it that's so difficult for some people to get past this step?
Yeah, it is really overwhelming when you're first starting trying to figure out how much to invest. Because often when people think of or get the idea of starting investing, it's because they heard of a success story and it was likely maybe even involving a lot of money. And so when they reflect on their own situation, they realize they have a lot of stepping up to do in order to get anywhere near a goal like that.
Alex, oftentimes throughout the year or even at the beginning of the year, people are re-looking at their finances, setting new goals, setting new budgets, and they start thinking about investing. And they said, okay, how much should I invest? And they start to worry, am I not committing enough? Am I committing too much? How do you address that?
I think it's a great thing when people start off the year thinking about money. That's the right way to start the year. And my advice and first starting point is when people think about how much money they're putting into stocks or investing, they usually think of it as a one-time thing instead of the start of a long process. And people need to think of investing just like any new challenge you would start the year with. Like if people want to lose weight or if you want to learn a new skill, just because you cut your calories in one meal or you practice that skill one time, you're never going to get the results that if you build that into your life moving forward. And that's how people should be reframing investing.
Is there a right or wrong amount to start with?
Now, this is the $1,000,000 question, and I think the answer I'm about to give you is not the one you want, but the answer is no. There is no right amount to invest. It varies greatly depending on your financial situation. And when I think about building a budget, I like to recommend a 70-20-10 split of your budget. And so let me walk you through that. The first 70% is the bucket that includes all the money that are necessary. So think about your rent or your mortgage, your bills, your utilities, all that stuff that you can't avoid every month, that goes into that 70%. The next bucket is 20%, and this is where investing comes into play. And when I'm talking about investing, I'm talking about all of your investments. So that could include your 401k from work, the company match at work, any IRAs you also have. And then finally, like we're talking through, getting your personal investing account started, that's part of this 20%. And then finally is the 10% bucket, the fun bucket, if you will, while also being where your emergency savings comes into play. So we don't want to go all in on investing. We need to make sure we have some money left over just in case something unexpected comes about.
Using a real world example, if a stock price is like $500 a share, but I really only have $150 every month to put into the investment category, do I save that money first and then identify the stock or and then invest once I have that money? What's your guidance there for someone who may not have all of the money they need to buy a share?
Yeah, I agree that the 70-20-10 is pretty aggressive. And there are a lot of people that live much closer to paycheck. So that can be a really aspirational goal. But one I do believe in is how you set yourself up for long term. But if that is not possible and you only have your $150, that is still an amazing amount to get started with. And the beautiful thing is nowadays you can buy partial shares of stocks. So if there is that $500 stock that I want to purchase, I can still do that. And I just buy $150 worth of shares instead of the full share. So this is a game changer for retail investors or people that are tight because it allows you to start with that smaller amount, but still benefit from a really great stock. So this is 100% what I would recommend, and kind of a reframe of getting away from this stock costs a lot to I can buy it in shares of that are partial from there.
So I start investing and immediately the stock tanks or it takes a pullback and I
Brutal.
regret. What's your guidance and feedback there?
The first is whenever I invest, I have to accept that that stock will both go up and down. There has never been a stock on the planet that only went up. Like the best stocks on the planet will go down and they might go down a lot. It's really about timing. So the way to reframe and get away from this is to move away from short-term thinking around that big pullback or that big loss, and it's to buy that stock over time. If I'm buying over time, I'm not worried about if I bought at the wrong point, because if I buy consistently, inevitably I'm ending up with great buy points from there, and it gets me away from this short-term thinking because if I'm focused on that recent pullback, in a couple of years from now, I will look back and realize that that was just a blip in time, and that if I had overreacted there, I may have panic sold and ended up making a lot of money in that stock in the long run.
So reiterating a little bit what we talked about already is it's just get in the market, overcome the fears, start gradually and let that money work for you. What would you say you want people to take away from this episode?
Yeah, I really want people to know that any amount is good to get started. Move away from this thinking that I don't have enough money. And if you want to get a lot of money from the market, I need to start with a lot. That's just not the case. We talked about partial shares, and that's 100% the approach. And then finally, really try to shoot for that 70-20-10 budget that I talked about. That setup is ideal to make sure you are maximizing your money and putting as much as possible to work in the market. Because, like you talked about, it's really about being in the market and not worrying about short term and buying from there.
In this next episode, we're going to talk about choosing what to invest in and identifying what actually matters most in that selection.
That's right. Because once I decide on how much I can invest with, the next big question is where is that money going to go?
Alex, thanks for talking stocks.
It was a pleasure. We'll talk to you soon.
Looking forward to it.